got Mac and Mac, John McMullen and Jody McDonald hanging with you right here on Birds 365. We are joined by another M, and if he spelled Jeff with a J, it'd be three JMs, but we like him as a GM as well. That's Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com. All right, GM, I'm going to ask you about the Eagles GM. Of all the home runs that Howie Roseman hit this weekend, which one was the one with the bases loaded? Which was the grand slam walk-off, best of all? How he had a lot of good moves that he's made over the past several days. Which one for you is the one that is going to bring home the most runs?
Oh, that's a good question, Jody. That's a tough one. I mean, I feel like this was a really good draft for the Eagles, but I don't know that it was out of character or obviously the DeAndre Swift trade jumps out because it's a really good scenario. You bring in a very good player. He's cost controlled for this last year. He's probably going to do well behind this offensive line, and then he's going to walk like Miles Sanders did and bring back a comp pick a year after. And so to be able to put that running back room together at the price that it is with the talent level that it is, I guess I have to say that's probably the best move. It's not like it doesn't remind me though of a swing for the fences home run, just a really smart, sensible move that jibes with what he's been doing for the last few years.
Howie made the baseball analogy at some point, Jeff. He said, "Hey, man, stroke that double in the gap. Doubles. You're gonna keep scoring runs." I think DeAndre Swift is a solid double in the gap. We had all the Bijan or bust stuff.
That was fun.
Which way is better? I think it's pretty obvious which way is better, but everybody fell for it. Why did they fall for it?
Oh, I don't know. Probably, I think probably because there weren't a lot of people, myself included, who really believed Jalen Carter was going to fall all the way down to 10. Well, he actually didn't, right? So technically he didn't because he went to 9. But I think that if you took Jalen Carter out of the equation, now I'm of the belief they still wouldn't have taken Bijan Robinson, even if he was available there. I think it was going to be an offensive line, defensive line draft regardless. But it was fun. It was fun because of just the potential of it happening. You know, Howie sort of put it out there that you have to always consider special traits at any position. So I think he helped stoke the fires a little bit there.
All right, I mentioned this here on Birds 365 on Friday because we were on after the first day of the draft, haven't been on since. Here's where I'll give the Eagles the nod, but also have them under the microscope. They took Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter's got issues. Are they issues you can deal with? Certainly you believe that, certainly hope that. Use the 9th pick in the draft. You won't have a guy who's in trouble the day he shows up at your door, as great and as talented a player as he is. The Eagles did say this is our responsibility. We believe in our room. We believe in our culture. We believe in our organization. We're going to help this young man grow up. John continues to point out that he's just immature. That's not murder one. That's immaturity. But the Eagles are taking on that responsibility, and I think they have the organization in place to be able to do that. If they don't, who are we going to question, GM?
If they don't, see it through?
If the kid comes in and's got issues and he gets caught speeding down one of the back roads on the other side of the Eagles complex down there at the NovaCare within the first month.
Yeah, I mean, of course that'll come back.
Certainly you point the finger at the young man, but they kind of have intimated that we're going to keep an eye on him. He's going to be good. Yeah, we're going to help this young man grow up. If he doesn't, who didn't do their job right?
Well, I don't think that it's anybody that didn't do that. They know what they're getting into, right? I mean, I think that sometimes when people listen to Howie and he talks about Dom DeSandro and all the information that he gets, that it's not like Howie was trying to say their information was different than anybody else's, or they found really great stuff about Jalen Carter that nobody else knew. What they mean is we are really well informed. We know what kind of kid we are dealing with here. We know, as John said, what the drawbacks are, and it's not just the fatal car accident. It's not just the pro day where he was overweight. I mean, he's had issues with other teammates. He's He's got to grow up. He's got to mature. And this is not normally a kid they will take in the first round. Their history over the last 5, 6, 7 years is prioritizing high character guys. But I agree with what you're saying that they made an exception this year because A, they believe that they had a really good locker room for it. B, they have some interesting circumstances of having his former college teammates who like him and get along with him on the team, Jordan Davis especially, that he has a friendship with. So they're taking a gamble there. And C, and I talked about this on the podcast Thursday that came out. I truly believe that he doesn't do this pick last year, the year before, the year before that. I believe the amount of draft picks that the Eagles had next year enabled Howie to be aggressive this year, aggressive in moving up. You saw him deal a few future picks, right? And then also aggressive if you take a risk and if it doesn't work out, it's not like you don't have another 3 top 60 picks again next year, right? They have their first, they have their second, they have the Saints second next year, I believe. So they've got a bunch of top picks in next year's draft to be able to quote unquote make up for any kind of mistake that or something that doesn't happen this year. But I just think that's what all led to them making this decision this year. I don't think they would have done it in years past.
How much does Howie's longer leash affect a pick like this? Because there's a lot of GMs that can't make this pick. I was struck by Peter King's column this morning, Jeff. I don't know if you saw it, but he was talking very conservatively. And Peter talks to a bunch of general managers, and most general managers, if they make a mistake like that, they're out the door pretty quickly. Not the case here. Howie can afford to take a chance where maybe other guys can't. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And I think Howie comes off lately in the last few years, even probably since winning the Super Bowl, right? Or maybe since surviving the Doug Peterson fallout. He comes off as someone to me that I don't want to say playing with house money, but he's got fewer years left probably as a GM than he's already had. I mean, he's not old, but he's been doing this for quite a while now. And Jeffrey trusts him implicitly. And, Julian's a big part of the front office now. I just, how he's made a lot of money. He's won a championship. He's survived a lot of dramas. Like, what does he have to lose? If he gets fired in 2 years as Eagles general manager or whatever, he's still set for life. He still won a Super Bowl. He still made it to another Super Bowl. And his formula for the last few years has been successful in how to make it work, how to correctly build a roster, how to draft the right way, which is not to say it's been foolproof. But in general, I think he's accomplished more than anybody ever thought when he got into the league. So I do think, and I think he presents himself that way now.
Will the NFL Network hire Howie Roseman and Jason Kelsey to do a late night show after both have left the Philadelphia Eagles 3 years from now?
It would sure be entertaining.
By
the way, you bring up Jason seems to be having so much fun. I'm surprised he came back. He loves this crap.
He really does.
He's doing live shows. He's not at he's not at the start of off-season work because he's out doing live shows around the country.
Did you guys see the shirts that the Chiefs fans were wearing at the draft? I thought they were the most brilliant shirts I've ever seen. It said Jason in the streets, Travis in the sheets. I thought that was fantastic.
How did I miss that one?
That was great.
Sorry, I didn't see that. All right. Let me ask you about something, John, I was just discussing before you punched it up. The Eagles really dismissed the linebacker position. And I understand the NFL has changed and the type of defense they played last year under Jonathan Gannon, which we believe it's going to be similar under Sean Desai now, doesn't really put an emphasis on linebackers. We saw this year, and it was emphasized in the draft with Bijan going number 8 and Jahmyr Gibbs going number 12. At least the valuation of running back has ticked back up. It hasn't done that at linebacker, certainly not here in Philadelphia, more so across the league, but not even a lot there. Has linebacker become a completely forgotten position in the National Football League, Geoff Mosher?
Don't tell the Chicago Bears. they
They're the only
spent a
team that
lot of money
is
this offseason.
doubling
Which is
down
why
on investing in linebackers.
Jody knows
Correct.
I constantly criticize Chicago, constantly for
Yeah.
bad decisions.
Yeah. Well, you guys said it, Jody. I mean, the league has changed. I mean, we're a league of sub packages now, and big nickels and big dimes and safeties playing that outside linebacker spot. In fact, former Eagles target Jeremy Chin, right, who has had a nice career so far as a safety, it sounds like he's going to be playing more linebacker as well. And you're seeing a ton of safeties move to linebacker as the league looks for different, more coverage options instead of stop the run options. So it doesn't surprise me. Now, could the Eagles have taken a linebacker in the third round? Sure, but then they probably wouldn't have taken Sidney Brown, and we'd be having the same discussion about how they ignore safety in the first 2 days of the draft for years and years. So eventually, you knew you were going to come out of the draft saying they're going to be a little deficient in one of these areas. There are still a decent number of names on the street for linebacker, and there's still trade opportunities like the way they got CJ Gardner-Johnson last year. Now, I don't think Howie's going to give up a whole lot for a linebacker, but you never know. I found it interesting that the Chargers drafted the kid that a lot of people liked, Dion Hensley from Washington State, right? I think he went to the Chargers. And my first thought was, wonder if Kenneth Murray is out the door, and he's the type of guy that maybe you can get for a low pick if he's available. So, and then he's the type of guy that the Eagles had, Jim Schwartz wanted several years ago when the Eagles took Jalen Reagor instead. So there'll always be somebody that the team can sort of try to acquire before the start of the season. I'd be shocked if they didn't. But it's still not going to be some name that blows everybody away. It's just going to be someone who can hold the fort down.
Yeah. Well, I did, Jeff, when we do this pre-draft stuff, you try to uncover names that the Eagles have visited, the top 30 visits, the virtual visits. I came up with 45-ish or so. And obviously that's a small list. I mean, it's much larger. But of that 45, one was an off-ball linebacker. Was the kid from Cincinnati, Ivan Pace, I think. Yeah. We didn't even get drafted. He signed somewhere, but I forget where. And I, in my Eagles mock, I picked Ivan Pace in the 5th round. I got him a 5th round, but whatever. Nonsense. I said, I got to bring somebody in. Yeah. But no, they don't even look. They don't even talk to these guys. I mean, I'm usually, and people know, I talk about this all the time. Detroit is my example to you, Jeff. They might have gotten 2 Pro Bowl players, but they made 2 bad decisions. I don't care. And my theory there is, if you make bad decisions consistently, you're going to have a bad team, a bad organization. If you make good decisions consistently, you might miss on a player, Jalen Reagor, but you're going to be good over the long haul. With this off-ball linebacker, though, I think they've gone too far. I agree for the most part. It's not a valuable position, but that doesn't mean you just can't you completely dismiss it. As we stand here today, and I agree with you, Jeff, they're going to add somebody. Nakobe Dean played like 36 snaps last year. Nicholas Morrow played a lot in Chicago, but it's Nicholas Morrow. Those are your 2 starting linebackers.
You know what's amazing? Nicholas Morrow got no guaranteed money.
No.
Who signs a contract in the NFL these days without at least like $100,000 guaranteed? And he signed early for getting no guaranteed money. I agree with you, John. I think it will be addressed. And the one thing, though, that I think even when they address it, it's not going to change that much is that the Eagles are going to be light on defense. Now, yes, they have Jordan Davis, but Jordan Davis didn't play more than 6 snaps in a row last year. When he's not on the field for the Eagles, they're light with Nolan Smith. They're light with Hassan Reddick. They're light with Nakobe Dean, who might be a very good linebacker, but he's still not a big guy. He's not a downhill linebacker. If it's Morrow, he's light too. I mean, we did see run defense at times hurt this team. Now, I know the Eagles don't care about it enough to say it ruined their season, but, Isaiah Pacheco certainly had some big runs up the middle against this Eagles defense in the Super Bowl. And it's clearly not an area that they felt like they had to improve this offseason. They just feel like they'll have to score more points or get more sacks. So they loaded up on pass rushers, and they still have a great offense. But they're not. And listen, I know the league doesn't go that way, so it's not like I'm ripping them for that. But every once in a while, you have to kind of take a look at your process and say, all right, we're not going to be the biggest front seven or front six, but maybe we need a little bit of a thumper there, even if he's just a first and second down guy, just to give us some beef there, or else teams are going to target us up the middle a lot.
All right, I unfairly hold my partner's feet to the fire every once in a while, so I'll do it to you instead of Johnny Mack here. On what date? And I hammered him about the Jalen Hurts thing. When is this going to get done? And then, sure enough, the Eagles got it done before either John and I. And he was more optimistic than I. I was like, this is going to go all the way to training camp. Oops, wrong about that one. But I was busting John's balls about when is this going to get done? On what date will the Philadelphia Eagle fans officially get to hear from Sean Desai? Because there's paperwork that says he's the defensive coordinator of the Eagles.
Yeah.
But we haven't been able to lay our eyes on him and or actually hear anything he has to say about the Eagles defense so far. When are we going to be able to officially designate Sean Desai with our own two eyes as the defensive coordinator of the Eagles?
That's a great question. Now, unless they have a press conference for him soon, just for him, then I guess he technically wouldn't have to speak until the second. There's that day that the assistants or the coordinators during OTAs speak, right, John?
That's where I'm guessing the OTAs.
That's probably going to be it. I can't imagine they're going to call some special press conference just for Sean Desai.
By this point, you wouldn't think so.
I
said, when are the OTA scheduled? If you guys know, it's your.
It's May. I don't have the dates in front of me.
Well, I know this: the Eagles start later than anybody and then finish earlier than anybody.
Yes,
with their OTA schedule. So
they are for the second consecutive season. They and the Cincinnati Bengals are the only teams with no mandatory
camp. Right.
Actually, 3 consecutive years because the COVID year.
That's right.
Which is where it all started. Let's see, May 30th, June 1st, June 2nd, June 5th, 6th, 8th. Those are your Eagles OTA days. So somewhere in that range. Well, finally,
I argue nice Memorial Day prop bet for when Sean Desai speaks.
I argue, Jeff, they should have learned from Nick Sirianni. Opening presser didn't go well.
Correct.
Why not get the guy some stinking reps?
Get reps.
Get him comfortable by training camp.
Good point. That's a good point. I would think though that if you just throw him in in the middle of OTAs, there's just so much going on that even if it's a bad press conference, it doesn't get enough. It doesn't have a lot of legs to it.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. And by the way, the guy's done it before. He was in Chicago.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. It is
not like he was in Topeka. He should be able to handle a press conference. I don't know, but that's me.
What about Topeka? All right, GM. John and I kicked this around earlier, the fact that the Eagles have taken it on themselves, that they're going to make sure that their number 1 draft pick, Jalen Carter, is maturing as he goes along. And it's going to be on the entire organization and his fellow Georgia teammate and the Fletcher Coxes and the Brandon Grahams of the world. How much of it falls to Jalen Hurts? He is the man in that locker room now. He has been made the man by virtue of the contract that he got. The quarterback is the leader of the offense, but most people think of the entire team. If you want someone to talk about maturity, the owner called him the most mature 24-year-old he's ever met in his entire life. You would think he would be the guy, but does offense cross over to defense? Is Jalen Hurts going to be a guy who can take Jalen Carter under his wing, a Jalen connection? How much do you think the responsibility falls on him, if any, to help this young man make sure that he's getting off his career in the right direction?
Yeah, there's certainly some. I mean, it would be weird for a quarterback to sort of take a defensive tackle, throw his arm around him and say, here's how you're going to do it, while you're here. And I would imagine that Jalen Carter, while he's here, starts off with a clean slate. But I think Jalen Hurts' responsibility sort of remains the same as far as just being the tone setter, the culture setter, getting to work early, all the Alabama isms and Oklahoma isms that he's always talking about. Rent's paid, got to pay the rent. Rent is due. All that stuff. Keep. What does he always say? Keep what it is. All that stuff. He just has to continue to live by that. If something pops up on his radar that's not right, he absolutely has, the clout in the locker room to say it. And most people, if not all people, are going to follow him if he says it. So Jalen Carter is going to have to abide by that. And, same thing with some of the other leaders too. Like Jason Kelce, I don't think it was an accident that Jason Kelce was there to talk to him and meet him during his pre-draft process, right? When he came to the Novacare, I think he said, I'm pretty sure that was intentional on the Eagles' part to feel out Jalen Carter with a guy like Jason Kelce and sort of get some feedback and see how they interact together as well. Brandon Graham, same thing. I mean, that Fletcher Cox, I think that's part of why this pick was made.
Jeff.
What's that?
I think Fletch is going to be the biggest one of all because he's the guy who's going to be with him every day in positional meetings. I think
100%.
Yeah. But boy, that I think his best player in the draft, just pure talent wise. I would have had him at number 1. Paris Johnson is a guy the Eagles really liked. I think he was at that. By the way, a lot of people had Paris Johnson. Las Vegas. I mentioned Peter King's. They had Paris Johnson number 1 on their board for where they were.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, they wanted 3 quarterbacks to go, and they had 4 players. Paris Johnson was number 1. Arizona traded back up for Paris Johnson.
Yeah, so that was an interesting move.
Yeah, he was really high on a lot of people's boards. But if you look at, we'll say day 2 on, who's your favorite pick?
Day 2 from the Eagles.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't say the Sidney Brown pick really, stands out to me, only because people Inside the Birds listeners are probably bored of me just constantly saying how badly this team needs to hit on a safety or a corner. And in order to do that, you actually have to take one in the first, second, or third round. Now, we knew safety in the first round was out, not even second round. But that was pretty close to a second round pick where they got Sidney Brown. I'm sure they had him on their board.
Early third,
Yeah, I'm sure they had him on their board as a second rounder. So that, a great kid, terrific leader. They talk about the Red Star. You never know if a guy's going to pan out, but usually when you have that kind of a work ethic and you've got a baseline skill set that makes you a second or third round pick, you're going to translate well to the NFL. The Jaquan Jarrett horror from 12 years ago, I don't think is going to be repeated here. I don't think it was a reach where they took him. I think what they say about him and his skill set will translate well. He's not Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I know he had the 6 picks. He's a right place in the right time guy, smart guy, not like an Ed Reed type, but I still think he's going to be a very serviceable safety for this team. And, we'll see how long it takes him to get into the starting lineup. I would think not too long, based on what the Eagles have.
Yeah, I already project him as a starter real quick as a follow-up to that. I was one of those guys, I'd look, Eagles need a safety. I'm looking at coverage safeties, and Sidney was a box safety in Illinois, and they had a coverage safety, by the way, the other guy.
Yeah, he went higher.
Yeah. The Eagles said, though, they're not changing defense. He's going to play in the post a lot, like all their safeties. And they just projected that he could do it. A lot of these college players, they have star position, rover position. They're just good players and they move them around. I was kind of impressed, and this goes with Tyler Steen as well, who's never played one game at guard, but that's where the Eagles project him at, announced him as a guard. I think they're ahead of the curve when it comes to, looking outside, not putting projects in boxes. You think that's where you think that's not rare, and a bunch of teams do that?
No, I do. Well, I do think teams will do that. I mean, based on, for example, Tyler Steen has 33.5-inch arms.
Yeah.
So you're not playing tackle in the NFL unless you are just the most supreme athlete to be able to play tackle with 33.5-inch arms. So I think that they're pretty good, though, at taking guys who did play tackle who don't necessarily fit the NFL tackle archetype. Jack Driscoll is a good example too. And saying we can move this guy inside and get pretty good production from that player. And if he has to move outside in a pinch a little bit, you can probably win with him, but you just don't want to try to win with him in the long term because he doesn't physically satisfy the criteria that we're looking for. And look, they've won games with Jack Driscoll. Driscoll's not bad. He's in the mix for the competition. I imagine Steen will win it and be the right guard. But yeah, it works in that way. And then
what you think Steen's going to beat out Juergens? Because I think he's got a shot. I think
he will probably be considered the lead horse in that race. Now, Juergens could potentially win it. I think that he'll always still be the next center. He has to prove he's strong enough to play right guard. He did play it well in the small, and he played center well last year when he had to fill in for Jason during the preseason. But right guard's a little bit different. And then they almost got cursed by the Jason Kelsey elbow injury because then Juergens had to play center all preseason and didn't really get the cross training. But it'll be a good race. And then the good thing is I feel like whoever doesn't win the competition is still going to be a pretty good backup at that spot that they can win with if need be. And I do think all the quarters coverage, John, that we're seeing, especially from the Eagles, the two high safeties, kind of lessens the burden for a post safety to be a true center fielder, right? I mean, how often do you see the Eagles play at least start off with two safeties deep, or if they're one, then they roll the safety back a little bit. So a guy like Sidney Brown, he's probably going to wind up only playing a third to a half of the field anyway.
All right, so we've got Sidney Brown, who, quote-unquote, was a box safety. We'll find out what he is. They signed Terrell Edmonds, who was a box safety. We'll find out what he is. Maybe we could actually find out how they plan to use these guys if they ever let Sean Desai talk. I am not going back down that road again. All right, instead, here's the question I've got for you. Talk about just putting a position out to pasture. Forget about linebacker. How about punter? Ty Detmer, they're bringing in to punt.
No, not Ty Detmer. That would be
amazing if they brought Ty Detmer in to be a punter.
Ty Zettner.
Zettner. Sorry, I misread that. I thought it said Ty Detmer. I thought he was coming back to restoke his career and was going to do so punting for the Eagles. A kid from Kansas State who I've never heard of. Sorry, Ty. Is Aaron Sippers going to be the Eagles kicker again? Is he going to do the punting again this year? When last we saw Aaron Sippers, not good. Are they going to bring in a veteran guy at some point to make it a three-way competition between Ty, don't call me Detmer, Zettner?
I'm not sure that they are. I mean, I would hope that they would, but it's not exactly an area that they run to upgrade until they really get squeezed like they did last year and had to sign Brett Kern. So I guess I would say though Zettner will probably get a pretty good look here at what he can do.
He's got a shot.
He's from Kansas State. If the one thing you know about Kansas State is that for like the last 30 years, they're always really good on special teams, right? I mean, that's always like ever since going back to Bill Snyder. So hey, if the punter is good, he'll probably get a really good look.
Yeah.
Can I tell you my favorite Bill Snyder story ever?
Sure.
Now, you guys are, I'm the oldest of the crew, but you guys are not spring chickens either. So you can actually remember this. We'll have a couple of people here that'll go, what the hell are you talking about? There was a time in our world where there was no such thing as the internet, where immediate information was out there and floating out there and the like. WIP, I want to say 91, 92, somewhere there about. Bill Snyder was the coach of Kansas State. And he's still the coach of Kansas forever, but he was a hot young coach at the time. Mm-hmm. I said, I am going to start a rumor here on WIP. It is false. It is a stone cold lie. I am making this you-know-what up. So if you're not listening now, you will not hear that. But for those of you who are listening, know that I'm lying. I'm making this up. The Philadelphia Eagles are interested in Bill Snyder as their next head coach. And I'm going to reference it 20 minutes from now and 40 minutes, and did it over 3 straight hours. I said, I want to see where this is picked up, because somebody will just get the story in a Philadelphia reporter who's lying through his teeth. The Eagles, as far as I know, have no interest in Bill Snyder. But we're going to talk as if they do for the next 3 hours. And I did, and the stories were breaking in Kansas. Oh, Bill Snyder might be going to the National Football League. That's so funny you brought up Bill Snyder's name. Well, 30 years ago.
That's not good. That's why Jonathan Gannon's completing talk radio with us.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I admitted I told the people, listen, I'm lying to you. I'm just making this crap up. It's not happening.
You're giving too much credit.
What I get from this is that Jody was the initial troll, like what we call an internet troll now. He is the godfather of trolls.
A stone cold troll 30 years ago. Yes, I did, because at the time, and now you can't do it anymore because the internet, there's immediate access. But the whole phone game passes down the line, it changes as it goes from person to person to person. Oh yeah,
in the history books, Jody.
There was people tried to get me a phone message from Kansas to see if I could confirm that I said.
They probably still do.
Oh yeah, I did.
Remember that time the NFL was interested in Bill Snyder? Remember that? They probably still talk about that in Kansas.
This should go in the chapter of a history book after we learn about the War of the Worlds night, where that radio broadcast that made everybody think the aliens were attacking, and then this would follow right in the history book.
You should learn from War of the Worlds, Jody, because people will believe it. So
I knew that I'd reel a couple in. Yeah. And I did that day. All right, Mosh, when's the next podcast going up? Inside the Birds.
It's out right now. It's out on all podcasts and YouTube platforms. Adam Kaplan and I, we did a little draft recap, a little DeAndre Swift talk, shared some of our scouting intel that we got on all the picks that the Eagles made, and then also what went into the trade to get DeAndre Swift. It's out.
At Geoff P. Mosher. When did that change? It used to be, didn't it used to be Geoff Mosher?
It was. Well, I do a Phillies podcast now as well with Frank Close. And once Twitter took my blue check mark away, I just felt like switching things up a little bit,
Yeah. How about that? Taking our blue check marks. How dare they?
I feel naked. Mosher. Definitely naked.
How dare they? And I'm not paying them. I will not do it.
Troll under a new Twitter address.
There we go.
Jeff, good stuff. Always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you much for coming on.
You got it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mosh.
Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. We only got a couple of minutes left. Make sure you stick around.
Do you